Hello, my friends, and welcome to VHS Monster Monday. That's right, we're going to be exploring a very strange creature on today's episode, the Intellect Devourer. Mwahahaha. Well, my friends, the Intellect Devourer is a strange aberration, a creature that has been in existence throughout the lore of many a Dungeons and Dragons game. Yes, the very concept of this walking brain terrorizes those who encounter it. Although, do not be mistaken by the fact that this creature, though very terrorizing indeed, is yet small. It is in fact tiny. It is considered a challenge rating 2 in the modern incarnation of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. But yet do not let its diminutive size decrease your possibilities for deploying this deadly creature into your most devious of schemes. Indeed, I would say that it is not something that is entirely difficult to scale to mid and even high-level applications. But let us explore further. An Intellect Devourer resembles a walking brain protected by a crusty covering and set on bestial clawed legs. This foul aberration feeds on the intelligence of sentient creatures, taking over a victim's body on behalf of its mind flayer masters. And there we have, at last, the first morsel of lore. Indeed, the mind flayers, the race known as the Illithids, have many minions at their disposal, and the Intellect Devourer is but one of them. Now this creature, while itself not particularly of mind-boggling intellect, being that it has a 12 intelligence, is still nonetheless capable of understanding deep speech, but it cannot speak itself. Therefore, its means of communicating is telepathy with a 60-foot range. Not a problem for its Illithid masters, for indeed, the Mind Flayer, as you could see, being a large brain, is telepathic, and the Illithids are very intelligent and very powerful creatures. So, what service does the Intellect Devourer render under these circumstances? Let us explore further. Mind Flayers breed Intellect Devourers to serve as roaming hunters of the Underdark, creating an Intellect Devourer by taking the brain of a thrall and subjecting it to a horrible ritual. Yes, as it sprouts legs, the brain becomes an intelligent predator, as twisted and evil as its masters. Now, I would assert that if you were to take the brain of a human who is a captive or thrall to the Illithids and extract it from its host's body, that brain would most likely die. But whatever nefarious, aberrant sort of magics are used in the rituals of the Illithids somehow preserves the brain and in fact transmogrifies the brain of the thrall into a brand new creature, sprouting legs and its very own intellect. To what devious end? An Intellect Devourer consumes a creature's mind and memories, then turns the host body into a puppet under its control. An Intellect Devourer typically uses its puppet host to lure others into the domain of the Mind Flayers to be enthralled or consumed. Yes. Interesting. Enthralled or consumed. How does one consume something when one does not have a mouth? Let us look further, not into the lore, but into the actual mechanics, as it is perceived in the edition 5. Now, as mentioned before, the Intellect Devourer is a tiny aberration, It is lawful evil. What does that mean? It means that there is an order to its evil. It is not just chaotically and randomly attacking and consuming memories and brain power. No, it is very methodical. Very methodical indeed. It is charged with tasks by the Illithids. It may think of its own accord, but however it proceeds, it does so with pattern. Yes, much like perhaps the squiggly pattern of brain matter of which it is made. Difficult to comprehend, and yet, nonetheless, there is an order. Now, it is not a strong nor particularly charismatic creature. It does have a reasonable dexterity, constitution, and intelligence. Things which I would assume a tiny brain creature would need to survive. It is resistant to all conventional weaponry attacks that are non-magical, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. It is also immune to being blinded because it has no eyes. It has blind sight for 60 feet, a passive perception of 12. As mentioned before, it understands but does not speak deep speech, and it communicates with telepathy with a range of 60 feet. This challenge rating 2 creature does not seem like much of a threat, even at low level, but allow me to continue, for this is truly the most devious part of these creatures' existence. Its abilities, you see. Detect sentience. The Intellect Devourer can sense the presence and location of any creature within 300 feet of it that has an intelligence of 3 or higher, regardless of interposing barriers, unless the creature is protected by a mind blank spell, which most creatures are not. Nay, not even most adventurers randomly choose to walk around with a mind blank spell conveniently applied to themselves. So, what does this mean? What it means is that despite its minimal passive perception of 12 and its moderate blind sight of 60 feet, it can nonetheless detect anyone, anything with an intelligence of 3 or higher within 300 feet of it. That is an enormous range. Think about how many times it would receive a pulse of intellectual energy, notifying it that adventurers or creatures were near. Think about that. 300 feet. That is a radar, a radius of a football field, an American football field. Yes, an enormous amount of range. So with that in mind, let us continue. What are its attacks? Well, it has multi-attack. It makes one attack and with its claws, and it uses Devour Intellect. The claws are nothing particularly life-threatening. No, it's +4 to hit, reach of 5 feet, 1 target, 2d4 plus 2 slashing damage. As illustrated in these pictures, they have large claws. They can run up and slash things, even though they are tiny creatures. I would consider this no more threatening than the attack from an ankle-biting dog, a canine such as a chihuahua, or some similar annoying lapdog. Now, the truly amazing powers are yet to come. Let us explore first the power that this creature is named after. Yes, Devour Intellect. The Intellect Devourer targets one creature it can see within 10 feet of it that has a brain. Now, what do we mean when we say see? Because it does not truly see. It doesn't matter. It can sense these things with its detect sentience, and it has blind sight. The point is that to use Devour Intellect, it must be within 10 feet. Remember that for a moment, because when we talk about scaling up these creatures, Professor Bill has a few ideas. Yes, indeed. The target must succeed on a DC 12 intelligence saving throw against this magic, or take 2d10 psychic damage. Also, on a failure, roll 3d6. If the total equals or exceeds the target's intelligence score, That score is reduced to 0. The target is stunned until it regains at least 1 point of intelligence. That is powerful, powerful, much more powerful than one might realize. Imagine that you failed your save, and now you have a 0 intelligence. How does one regain its lost intelligence? Let us read on. Power number 2, Body Thief. The Intellect Devourer initiates an intelligence contest with an incapacitated humanoid within 5 feet of it that isn't protected from protection from evil and good. If it wins the contest, the Intellect Devourer magically consumes the target's brain, teleports into the skull, and takes control of the body. While there, the Intellect Devourer has total cover against attacks and other effects originating outside of its host. The Intellect Devourer retains its intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores, as well as its understanding of deep speech, its telepathy, and its traits. It otherwise adopts the target's statistics. It knows everything the creature knew, including spells and languages. I would like to remind you at this point that this odd, tiny creature is considered challenge rating 2. Bear in mind, it can suck out your memories and brain and put itself into you and control everything, like a puppet master. Yes, think about that. If the host body dies, the Intellect Devourer must leave it. A protection from evil and good spell cast on the body drives the Intellect Devourer out. The Intellect Devourer is also forced out if the target regains its devoured brain by means of a wish. A wish. Now, allow me to posit this question, Dungeons & Dragons community. How many times would you say that a Tier 1, perhaps Tier 2, a lower level party has access to a wish spell? Is it not then, would it not follow that a lower level party encountering an Intellect Devourer and one of their members being body thieved by the Intellect Devourer, how likely would it be that they would in fact have access to a wish? Unlikely. Consider this as we consider the lethality of this meager creature. The Intellect Devourer is forced out if the target regains its devoured brain by means of a wish. By spending 5 feet of its movement, the Intellect Devourer can voluntarily leave the body, teleporting to the nearest unoccupied space within 5 feet of it. The body then dies unless its brain is restored within 1 round. How the hell do you restore a brain within 1 round? Now, I am going to find, when I turn the next page, that most assuredly some of these questions will be answered. For example, how does one regain regain their intelligence after they've had their intellect devoured? Or how does one restore a brain other than a wish spell, which we have already established is highly unlikely at low or even mid levels? Unfortunately, the next page is Invisible Stalker, and not, in fact, the answers to the questions. Now, perhaps some of you are watching and saying, Bill, in the future, in 2020 and 2021, the unearthed arcana provided by Wizards of the Coast answered these questions, realizing that they missed a few points. But I ask you, are we not autonomous enough as dungeon masters to craft our own responses? And I answer my own question by saying, certainly we are. So, how would I resolve this, you ask? I will tell you. I feel like a lesser restoration spell might be a kind and generous way to allow a party to restore their friend's intelligence. I would say also, as a caveat to a lack of such spells, that for every long rest, said adventurer regains 1 hit point. 1 intelligence point. I could also assert that If you wanted to be less cruel and more kind, you could say that after a long rest, the adventurer's intelligence returns. So, really it is a question of how cruel of a DM you wish to be. And you might even ask yourself that question before employing these nefarious aberrations. I am certain by this time that you have inferred from my tone that I believe these Intellect Devourers are much more dangerous than their challenge rating 2 would lead you to believe. Yes, they are dangerous because of those last two powers. Now, how could we have enormous fun with these creatures? Well, step 1. You change Body Thief so that the person's literal brain is not sucked out and replaced, but rather you make the Intellect Devourer much like a parasite of sorts. Now, the Intellect Devourer is tiny. Could it fit itself into someone's brain? Probably not, but remember, you are playing a role-playing game and it's fantasy and there is magic. And the very idea of a brain walking around with legs is stupid anyway, so what I am suggesting, that this thing could somehow magically turn microscopic and become a parasite into the host's brain, allows you to have a little more leeway with not completely killing off a member of the party. So you could make the Intellect Devourer magically teleport itself and also shrink itself to a microscopic size, wherein it becomes a parasite living in the brain of its host's body. It controls that host. You could be kind and allow once per day for that player to make a contested intelligence roll to break free from the control of the parasite. This would not remove the parasite. It would allow perhaps an agreed upon amount of free thought and free will from the player with their character. So for example, you could say for 30 seconds, for 5 rounds, you can communicate as yourself. And maybe the player would take this opportunity in character to tell their party mates that they are being controlled and there's some parasite in their brain, they can't control their own thoughts, help them, and then they go back into their state of being controlled. This could be a very fun thing, because it doesn't necessarily involve character death in the same way that would most likely occur with rules as written with the Body Thief. Now, how do we scale this? You could certainly use Intellect Devourers with mid-level parties very easily. Very easily, I would assert that, in fact, you wouldn't even have to change very much at all. Perhaps you can make the DC of the contested intelligence save a little bit higher, perhaps a 15 instead of a 12. Likewise, if you would like to use Intellect Devourers with a high-level party, you could certainly scale them up. Make the DC 18, perhaps. What is terrifying about this creature is that there is no daily limit on the amount of times it can do these specific powers. So if you decided to attack a party that was adventuring through some subterranean caverns with 12 Intellect Devourers, you could indeed continuously, every round, make these rolls. And since so many people in the Dungeons and Dragons community have claimed that intelligence is useless, you as a DM would vindictively prove them otherwise. Their entire party would become thralls to the Illithids, end of campaign, and que sera sera to all of the unbelievers in the value of the intelligence ability score. So, I suppose we could end this video by considering the philosophy of what it means to be a dungeon master. If you are a dungeon master who relishes the adversarial relationship between dungeon master and players, in a sense competitively wishing to defeat the party, or challenging the party to defeat you, you certainly should use an Intellect Devourer. Frequently, if you will. You could even feel free to modify them. Yes, you can make the Intellect Devourer not look like a stupid brain with legs. Allow me to give you a sub-sample. Some of you in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons may also enjoy science fiction, such as Star Trek. And perhaps, if you are old, such as Professor Bill, you may remember a movie that featured the legendary Ricardo Montalban. Yes, I speak, of course, of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Now, Khan, a genius, a genetically modified genius, figured out, he found an indigenous creature, these earworms, that he would put into his victims' ears, which would cause tremendous pain in the victim. And only with a sonic-emitting device was Khan able to calm that pain, and thus, somehow, the earworm and Khan's sonic-emitting device allowed Khan to effectively mind control the victims with the earworms. That is not so very different, in fact, from the idea of an Intellect Devourer and the hierarchy with the Lithids and Intellect Devourers and Thralls. So, I would posit that as the DM, you can do whatever the hell you want. You can use the Intellect Devourer as a fun way to mess around with the party and introduce them to the true raw power of the Lithids. Or you can say, I do not like this lore. I do not care for Lithids. I do not like tendricle-faced mind flayers. No, I would like to just use these Intellect Devourers as my own thing. Huzzah. And so you should, because you are the DM. Feel free to change the appearance of these things, as I said, because then your more veteran and jaded players will not run in terror. They may be curious when they see a strange purple segmented worm, or they may be curious when they find a fish that is out of water flopping around, and it doesn't seem to attack them, but it seems to be animated and alive despite being out of water. Little do they know that inside of that fish is a Intellect Devourer who is about to make a contested intelligence attack to devour the intellect of one member of the party and then body thief that party. So feel free to do whatever you want and scale this to any level, because the Intellect Devourer is truly a masterpiece of horrific aberration that has been around in Dungeons & Dragons for ages and is certainly going to be something that your party will never forget. I would be remiss if I did not give you an idea. So here is one such idea that you could scale to any level. The party is in a series of insert underground place here. Caves, subterranean lair, ruined cellar of a castle, a dungeon, any such thing. They come across something else that is not obviously an Intellect Devourer. It could be a cat. It could be a friendly person. It could be a prisoner who's chained up and begs for freedom and help. Whatever you decide to use, whatever they will not suspect to be the Intellect Devourer, the Intellect Devourer will be inside of that thing, that person, that creature. And then it will make its assessment of the party. It will try to find the person who it can most easily dominate, who has the least intelligence, and it will in fact make its attempt. And then it works its way around through the party, causing mischief and hijinks until it can acquire the contested intellect of the most powerful spellcaster in the party, hopefully a wizard, because then if it defeats the wizard, it will have access to the wizard's spell, and it will enact whatever machination it wishes to do. And remember that you don't have to use Mind Flayers. You could simply just use the Intellect Devourer as its own nefarious little turd of an aberration that likes to mess with everyone. So, I hope this video has been entertaining and informative, and perhaps if you enjoyed this strange format, leave a note in the comments below. If, however, you hated this format and you never want to see it again, give this video a thumbs down And also, leave a comment in the comments below telling me that you don't like it. And regardless of what you say and do, I probably won't care anyway, and I'll just keep making videos however I want. Because, to close the video, I am, once again, Bill Allan. Thank you for watching, and we will see you on the next episode of Monster Monday. And then we will continue rolling, and I will make an edit. And now I have to do this whole fucking video in this stupid voice, which is not even truly British. It's the stupidest thing we've ever made, Karaffa.
Well, hello, and welcome to Bill Allan World. I am Wizzy, the Wizard. I'm back once again to remind you to subscribe and click on the notifications button, and also watch videos that are over there. Tune in to the next episode of whatever show you were just watching and watch other shows featuring Bill. He made me say that because he's a narcissist. Okay, bye.